Gentlemen, welcome back to MGTOW Money, the fastest growing YouTube MGTOW channel out there. Today we're going to be discussing internationalizing yourself and your assets and finding freedom in an unfree world, if you will. Before we get to that, this of course is MGTOW 2.0. This is the second wave of MGTOW. This is all about actionable, practical ideas on financial freedom, retiring early, and in general, how you can increase your options and choices in life. Because frankly, that's what it's all about. That's what a wealthy person has. A wealthy person has the ability to make many different choices. They have lots of different options. A poor person has much more limited choices and options. Continuing on today's topic, avoiding being a potted house plant, how you can become an international man. And before we get to that, let me define what I'm talking about. When I'm talking about internationalizing yourself, I'm talking about, in simple terms, creating some sort of tangible physical connection with an overseas location, just something outside of the borders of your country, some sort of connection. In other words, maybe you open up a bank account outside your home country. Maybe you buy some property outside your country, or even you just obtain a passport from outside your country. So in other words, you have your home country's passport and you have a passport from another country. And in 99.9% of the world, all these things are absolutely legal. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You can do it. Why would you want to do it? The big reason why: greater choices and options. And to drill down on that more in detail, let me give you some specific reasons why I think it's very important to do so. Number one, and this is a biggie, I think having a physical and psychological escape hatch is critical for any man. It goes without saying, and I know this has been said for years, but we are living in unusual times. Over the past couple of decades, we've seen enormous changes in the economy. We've seen the economies across the world go way up and go way down. And obviously, you cannot predict the future. I certainly can't predict the future. We don't know what's going to happen, not just from an economic standpoint, but just from a macroeconomic environment. We don't know how the world is going to play out 20, 30, 40 years from now. You do not want to be a deer in the headlights if things go south in your home country. At least you want to feel like, I have an idea, I have an escape hatch, I have somewhere that I could go, I have some sort of plan of getting on with my life if things go south where I am. So that's number one. Number two, lifestyle. This is incredibly positive. There's about 200 countries in the world. I have not traveled all 200 countries. However, I've traveled to many different countries. And one thing that I've seen is each country, it's very interesting, even though they act and feel very similar, they all have, though, a very unique personality, if you will. Just like I'm friends with certain people and I'm not friends with other people, each country has a very unique, distinct style, flavor. This is far beyond food. This is far beyond the music. This is far beyond just how people interact. There's just something very specific, and it's almost indefinable to me. But I think once you get out and travel, you'll discover how different all countries are. And what you might find is, and I think that many, many expats find, is that, hey, I like my home country. I like the country of my birth, but maybe there's something even better out there, or maybe there's not. Many guys just end up staying just where they are in spite of having traveled to many different places. Third reason why you need to look at internationalizing yourself is the cost of living. Remember a few videos ago, I specifically recommended about determining your magic number. That is absolutely critical. And I know for a lot of guys are going to feel like, yeah, okay, I got my magic number, and in my home country of the US, Canada, Australia, the UK, that's going to put me at poverty level. That's going to put me on a baseline existence. And I mean existing, I really won't be living much of a quality life. That can be hard. However, take that same amount of money overseas to some countries and you can live really, really well. In the future, I'll talk about some very specific countries and some ideas, but specifically, I'm thinking about countries in Central America, South America, Southeast Asia, There are some great countries, some wonderful lifestyles that you can get, that you can internationalize yourself into, where you can feel great, that don't require a tremendous amount of money, that don't require $1 million USD. So that'll give you something to look forward to. Now, I want to give you a book recommendation. And this specific book recommendation is one of the most profound and inspirational books that I ever read. I've read it years ago. I've read it multiple times. Specifically, the book is PT by W.G. Hill. And PT stands for a lot of different things, whether it be permanent tourist, passing through, prepared thoroughly, whatever. But specifically, he talks about setting up 5 flags in his 5 flags theory of internationalizing yourself and your assets. I'm not going to go into this in detail today. Do some research on the 5 flags theory. But some very specific things that he does recommend that you can do today, that you can start looking at immediately, are something that I just mentioned before. Looking at getting a second passport. One of the very common ways of doing so is through ancestry. If your family came to your present residence, your present country within the past generation or two, it's more than possible just through ancestry, you could obtain a passport from another country. Another way is through economic means. If you make investments or buy property in some countries, you can also obtain a passport. So there's a couple of different ideas. Again, I'll let you do your own research. A second thing that I would recommend that you do, get out a sheet of paper and write down not some things that you would like in a new country or a place that you would move to, but write down the things that you want to avoid. So in other words, I do not want to live in a country that has X, Y, or Z. I'll give you some example from my own list. I do not want to live in a country that has cold weather. So in other words, I wouldn't want to live in Northern Europe. I do not want to live in a country where I have to drive. In other words, I don't want to live in a specific locale where I have to worry about driving a car all the time. I do not want that. I do not want to live in a place where I feel isolated. So in other words, frankly, I don't want to live on an island. I don't want to live out in the middle of the woods. You might be just the opposite. There are lots of guys who love the isolation, who want to be out in the middle of nowhere, or they want to live on a Caribbean island somewhere or some island in some ocean. Fantastic. Awesome. We're all going to the same destination ultimately at some point in the future in our lives. Let me give you a third thing that you need to start doing immediately. On your next holiday or vacation, take that list that I was just talking about, again, writing down those things that you don't want, and start thinking about places that might provide those things that you don't want. In other words, those places, going back to my list, that do have warm weather, that allow me to avoid having a car, that allow me not to feel isolated. Again, there's over 200 countries to choose from. Think about the thousands of cities within those countries. You've got a lot of choices. I'll let you do your own homework. Again, I'll give you some ideas in a future video. To wrap up, we are building a MGTOW army of financially independent men because we're going to move this forward. I need you to share this channel on forums with your friends, with anyone that you think can benefit from this. Hit the subscribe button now and the like button if you found this information useful. John Galt out.